Argument from American Beauty, Part 2, Thora Birch, Therefore, God Exists. Argument from Feeling Love All Around, also known as PCS's Sisters Argument, Part 5. I can just feel love all around me. I know the world is a good place, that people are essentially good, and that comes from God. I don't know how I know, it's just there. You've never felt it? I don't know how I know, I just know. Stop pestering me. Sheds tears until nasty non-believer goes away. Therefore, God exists. Calvinist argument, also known as Tertullian's argument. If God exists, he will let me watch you be tortured forever. I rather like that idea. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Misdefinition of a Religion. You don't want to be an evolutionist, do you? Atheist calmly explains that evolution is a scientific theory, not a religion. But you believe in it. That means you support social Darwinism, and that's just yucky. I don't want to be yucky, so I can't support evolution. But I need some explanation for the origin of life. Evolution has nothing to do with therefore, God exists. Argument from Brainwashing. Atheists claim Christians have been brainwashed by churches. We can just as easily say that they have been brainwashed by secular colleges and universities in their futile thinking and secular reasoning. Your brainwashing keeps you from the truth. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Dan Quayle. God exists. Argument from Ignorance, also known as Argument from Personal Incredulity, Part 3. I don't understand evolution. I mean, how could there be nothing, then something? A well-informed atheist gives accurate explanation of evolution and gently explains that the beginning of the universe has nothing to do with evolution. Well, it seems way too complicated and unlikely to me. Plus, I don't want to live my life thinking I evolved from a monkey. Therefore, God exists, and Jesus died for our sins. Atheist argues that theist ignorance of evolution does not logically lead to the conclusion that there is a God, let alone the Christian God. Says you, God bless. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Boxing Defeat, also known as Evander Holyfield Argument Number 1. I prayed to Jesus for help in knocking out my opponent. I lost. Therefore, God wanted me to learn something, build character, and or God works in mysterious ways. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Jesus' torture. No one ever suffered as much as Jesus did on the cross. No, not the victims of the Inquisition. No, not the women burned at the stake or hanged as witches. No, not all the people who died thinking they were going to hell. Who but God would suffer like that for us ungrateful, unworthy humans? Therefore, God exists. Argument from Fear. If there is no God, then we're all going to not exist after we die. I'm afraid of that. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Communism. All communists are atheists. All communists are bad. Haven't you watched the 6 o'clock news? Therefore they are wrong. Since the moral majority is theist and non-communist, they are good. Therefore they are right. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Design, Part 2, also known as God of the Gaps, also known as Argument from Personal Incredulity, Part 2, also known as Design Tautological Argument, Part 4. Isn't X amazing? I don't understand how X could be without something else that I don't really understand either, making or doing X. This something else must be God because I can't come up with a better explanation. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Intimidation. See this bonfire? Therefore, God exists. Argument from Serious Assertion. God exists. No, seriously. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Boxing Victory, also known as Evander Holyfield Argument Number 2. I prayed to Jesus for help in knocking out my opponent. Having worked for years and years with the best trainers in the business, I beat my opponent, whom I was heavily favored to beat anyhow. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Todd Beamer. Todd Beamer prayed Our Father with a switchboard operator after his flight was hijacked. Todd Beamer was a hero. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Internet Authority. There is a website that successfully argues for the existence of God. Here's the URL. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Meta Smugness. Fuck you. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Terrorism, Part 3, also known as Nephilim Free's Sisters Argument, Part 2. September 11th was really, really bad. We have bad things happen to us when we're doing something bad. Therefore, September 11th was a punishment for something we did. Maybe it was being arrogant. Yeah, that's it. God let September 11th happen to teach America humility. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Destiny. Without God, there is no ultimate destiny, and my destiny is dust. I can't accept that because I want more. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Sins I Like, also known as PCS's Sisters Argument, Part 4. I don't like abortion, but this is just my opinion. I want my opinion backed up with facts, but in the absence of facts, morals will do. Christians say abortion is a sin. Yeah, I have allies. But for a sin to exist and Christians to be right, God must exist. Therefore, God exists. Ninjas, Part 3. Ninjas make their living by trafficking human organs. Ninjas can extract your kidney in under 1 second. You had better make a doctor's appointment to ensure you still have all of your organs. If you're missing an organ, short of crying like a little girl, there's not much you can do about it. Argument from Probability. We should believe what is probably true. I have arbitrarily assigned the proposition God exists a probability of 0.75. That probability came from my ass, which I know assigns extremely accurate probabilities to propositions concerning the existence of God. So God probably exists. Therefore, God exists. Ontological Argument, Part 1. I define God to be X. Since I can conceive of X, X must exist. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Enthusiastic Gospel Music, also known as Argument from Blues Brothers. When I go to church, people dance, sing, and clap. It's fun. I like dancing, singing, and clapping. Also, the youth group gets ice cream and cookies from the collection money. I like ice cream and cookies. Therefore, God exists. Incontinence. Had you stopped to consider the consequences of your actions, even for just a moment, death with dignity could have been an option for you. Argument from Casualty and Intelligence by Peter Kreft, also known as Design Teleological Argument, Part 7. You can't get more in the effect than you had in the cause. A universe ruled by blind chance has no intelligence. Humans are intelligent. Therefore, there must be a cause for human intelligence that transcends the universe. Therefore, God exists. Argument from Dead Firefighters. All those dead firefighters were blessed by a Catholic priest before they gave their lives. For people they didn't even know. Yes, they too were mostly Catholics. I just know. Therefore, God exists. Parental Argument. My mommy and daddy told me that God exists. Therefore, God exists. Argument from God is like a radio signal, also known as Argument from Auditory Hallucinations. There are many radio signals floating around in your head all the time. God is one of them. You just have to listen for the right signal. Therefore, God exists.